Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Chris here with InsideTheU. Thanks for stopping by. Good to be back out here for practice. The Hurricanes had their first day off of the fall yesterday. Back at it today in shells, and then they're expected to be in full pads for the first time tomorrow for day 7 tomorrow. But here, day 6, let's talk about a few things. The tight ends talked after practice, as well as tight ends coach Cody Woodall. Here's what Cody had to say about these freshman tight ends with Luka Gilbert and Brock Schott, who I think will have opportunity to earn a role this year. Here's what he had to say when I asked him about kind of the transition it takes for young tight ends and the position they play adjusting to college.
Right, in the system that we run here, right, we're running a pro-style conceptual run game with a lot of communication, mic identification. So that's probably the biggest thing for him in the front 7 aspect of it, is truly understanding who you're blocking. Like, right, we block people here, like we don't really block space. So the communication part of it's like learning a new language. Then in the pass game, it's understanding details of it, right? You know, at the high school level, it's a lot of times they're bigger, faster, and stronger, right? So they can make plays. And at this level, you got to understand how to beat man coverage and attack leverage, and understand when it's zone, you work a certain type of cut, and when it's man coverage, you work a different type of cut, right? It's not rocket science, but again, it just takes reps, right? And then you combine it with pass protection rules, right? So it's all phases of it. It's really where it's verbiage and reps from understanding the detailed part of it is where they'll separate, because they're all phenomenal athletes. And the detail and understanding that piece of it and be able to play fast, that's the biggest learning curve for most young guys.
And I think Luka and Brock have both shown positive signs in fall practices, watching them go through drills, making catches in half-line situations or one-on-ones, but also in spring ball. They were here for the spring. And I think what's good is they're going through this together. Both of them are roommates right now. And I understand that they are competing with one another for playing time and roles, and they will throughout their careers. But the thing is, both players are completely different. You know, with Luka at 6'7" or 6'8", is a lot different of a tight end than Brock Schott, who's much smaller than Luka, and has that speed element. But I think both of them, with what the skill sets they do have, I think they have a chance to be good players. And as I mentioned, I think they have a chance to have roles on the team this year in certain capacities. You know, Alex, he kind of figures right now to be that number 2 tight end. The transfer from Tulane, had some touchdowns last season. But it kind of all starts with Elijah Lofton. After earning some playing time last year as a freshman, Elijah is expected to be the number 1 tight end for this team and be a productive guy as a sophomore. You know, and when you watch him go through one-on-ones, his skill set is evident. He's really difficult to guard in one-on-one situations. He gets in and out of his breaks. He has a good catch radius. You see that in practices. And I think the biggest thing for him is really just understanding what it takes to be the number 1 guy, you know, to be relied on, to be counted on, to be a productive guy. And Carson Beck has played with good tight ends in the past. He knows how to implement tight ends into the passing game. And I think he's going to try to get these guys involved here at Miami as well. And Elijah just has to understand the ins and outs of what it takes, all eyes on him, to be a guy counted on in the passing game. You know, and I think, you know, based on what Coach Woodall had to say, and Elijah talked about it too, just kind of embracing it, you know, and we'll see how things kind of play out. But he's a guy that they can move around in different spots if they want, line him up in different spots in the passing game with different routes that he could run. But I think he's got to be just kind of the key for him. You know, the key for Elijah is to kind of be an all-around tight end. You've got to be able to do different things, especially as a number 1 tight end. You've got to be able to block. You know, you've got to be able to, you know, knock off defensive linemen. You know, Alex talked about that, kind of just the adjustments coming from Tulane to the defensive linemen that he's seeing here. And I think Elijah, just the totality of the position, there's a lot that goes into it. You got to be able to beat safeties or linebackers in route situations, and as I mentioned, kind of help with blocking, or just absolutely kind of stay on the line blocking. However, with Miami having a good offensive line with good tackles, Markel Bell on the left and Francis Maui-Noa on the right, the blocking assignments and responsibilities might not be as much as it would for a tight end if the offensive line was struggling, where you really got to have that tight end blocking a lot. And going back to Carson Beck, look, I haven't talked about Carson much since that first day, but I do want to point this out because I've been watching him each and every day, clearly. And one of the things that stands out to me is that he's just delivering good passes. You know, it's accurate, it's on target, he's throwing deep passes, he looks good out here. You know, I think he's sometimes talking about the receivers if you want to see more plays, but oftentimes the balls thrown by Carson have looked good. I think he's putting the ball in good placement for these guys. I think he's making good decisions. Again, we're not seeing full team action out here, but players and coaches have spoken highly about Carson and how he's looked in these team settings. But just from what I've seen out here, what we're allowed to see, I think he's looked good. I think there's certainly reason to be optimistic, and I know everybody's pretty encouraged about what they hear from Carson and being a good quarterback, but just from seeing it, just the way he throws the ball, the way he kind of goes about each and every drill, I've been impressed, and I think it's positive signs with Carson. One thing too, I think Carson does just a really good job with his touch. I think he's doing a good job of a short pass. It's not overthrown. It's not too hard. I think he does a good job with each depth. His medium route passes, I think those look good. And then, when it's time to throw the ball deep, he's certainly willing to throw it deep, and he's been throwing it deep and on target, whether it's on the sideline, on some go routes, or during one-on-one situations, or even the deep passes over the middle. I think he's done a good job of showcasing his arm to throw in different spots on the field, which is a good sign. And when I've been keeping track of some of the half-line team stuff that he's been doing that we've been able to watch, he's pretty accurate. He's not throwing a lot of incompletions. He's not throwing the ball. It's not hitting the ground a lot. I do want to point that out. I made a note in the live updates that, yes, the offensive players, the ball was on the ground a little too much during the viewing period today, so that's disappointing to see, and hopefully they bounce back, and hopefully they bounce back the rest of practice. But again, just noticing that with what I saw. But I think with Carson, the ball is pretty much on target most of the time, which is certainly a good sign. That's what you want to see. The other quarterbacks, Emory Williams is out here, Luke Nickel, those are two guys people know, as well as Judd Anderson, and they're just kind of getting their reps when they get it. They kind of rotate the quarterbacks around in the different drills that we're able to see. So let's switch gears to the defensive side of the ball, in particular the defensive line. I haven't spoken much about them at all, but I think it is interesting to see what's kind of transpiring, or how I think it's going to play out for Miami at the defensive tackle position. I think it's going to be a combination of three guys in particular. I think you're looking at Justin Scott, and they need a good year out of him. The size is there, the athletic ability. You like what you see from him last year as a freshman, but year two, again, we're going to talk about this a lot with this team. Year two guys really taking a step up in their role, responsibility, and they have to step up their play as well. Justin Scott, David Blay, I think those will be the two guys, and also Ahmad Moten. Those are the three guys, I think, at defensive tackle that'll be their primary guys. Now, can Dalen Russell, can the other guys at defensive tackle, can Adante Simpson, can these guys do enough, show enough to be a number 4 defensive tackle in the rotation? We'll see, but it wouldn't surprise me if, just based on the things that we're hearing with Coach Heatherman and how he likes to run his defensive line, that it wouldn't surprise me if they wanted to move some ends inside, because they do have a lot of defensive ends. You got Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor as the top guys, but they've got other guys that they could kind of move inside if they want, on different packages, or just to provide different looks, kind of go with more of a speed look. That wouldn't surprise me at all if you get more defensive ends in there, maybe essentially three at a time, as opposed to 2 and 2. So we'll see how that goes, but it wouldn't surprise me. But again, it's really important for that 4th defensive tackle to step up. And as far as the defensive ends go, I find it to be very competitive, and I think production is going to be a big key from this group, because you've got guys with similar skill sets as pass rushers. You're talking about Booker Pickett, Marquise Lightfoot are two examples of this. Artavius Jones was the defensive tackle that I didn't mention, but I want to make sure I throw his name into the mix as well as a guy to kind of keep in mind there at defensive tackle. But at defensive end, you got Malik Bryant as well, the kind of this rush end type. So these guys are doing their best to really step up and kind of provide some pass rushing ability as well. And I think that's just really important for these guys to step up, to be able to make plays. They got to be able to finish plays, obviously, with getting sacks or tackles for loss, but just applying that pressure, I think is going to be really important for the defensive ends this year. And there's two other defensive ends to keep in mind that I think that can make plays for this team this year. Mondo Blunt, coming off of his freshman year, and then Hayden Lowe, a freshman who continues to impress. You watch him, I watched him today, kind of going through some drills. I like the way he moves off the line. I think he's got a great approach. He's got good athletic ability. The size is there. I think he's going to be a guy that, not just for this year, but I think there's a reasons to be excited about Hayden for his future at Miami. And I think it'd be great to be able to get him in there, get some reps, almost in a way that we saw last year with Justin Scott. Different positions, but we saw Justin get in there about 10 snaps a game, and we'll see if Hayden can handle that, can get that, because there is a lot of competition there, and we'll see as things kind of continue to transpire. But I like what I've seen from Hayden, and again, Armando as well. You know, he's a guy that has impressed. Again, one of these year 2 guys looking to kind of take a step up. Different players and different sizes there with Armando, but I like what both are bringing to the table. I think, again, you're talking about a defensive line group that has a chance to be pretty good in terms of applying pressure, you know, especially if you get Ruben Bain to really apply that pressure on the quarterback, but also with the run game, really kind of show that burst off the line of scrimmage. I think that'd be good. And then Akeem Mesidor is a guy that I think just because he's been here for a long time, you kind of forget about him in a way, but I'm curious to see how his season goes, because we've seen Akeem play at really high levels at times, at periods of times throughout his career at Miami. And we'll see if he can kind of get back to that or build off of it. But I think he's a very important player for this defense. He's a guy that isn't the loudest guy, but I think he's got a great voice. I think he provides the team great perspective and leadership ability. And I just really like what he's able to bring to the team. Hopefully he stays healthy. But again, hopefully his production can really stay the same and be very consistent at a good level throughout the season. I think that'll be really important for this team, for this defense, for the defensive line group. A couple more quick notes before I wrap this up. I do want to mention Jordan Lyle. You know, they're doing this inside run drill, and Jordan made a nice cut, which is great to see, and kind of got upfield in a hurry. And look, they're not tackling and running backs and the running game in general. It's tough to really gauge it. But to me, that move, it really looked like a move that he could have got, you know, chunk yards out of it, you know, an over 10-yard gain, 10-yard run. The way he bursted, I thought that was a good sign. You like to see that from Jordan, and that's exactly the back he needs to be able to be, kind of that one-cut move and get upfield. But I like what I saw to Jordan on that particular play there. And just wrapping it up with a few notes on the kicking situation at Miami. Look, we're not able to watch what the kickers do at practice. It's been that way for years, but I do want to pass on a few notes. Miami's, you know, they're going to have a new kicker this year. And Bert Auburn was brought in from Texas. He's a guy that didn't have the high field goal percentage conversion rate last year, so he's certainly looking to build off of that. But also they got a guy in Carter Davis as well. 2 guys kind of a little bit different. Carter's got the big leg. He's a guy that I could see kind of taking over the kickoff duties there. And who knows, maybe it's a long field goal type situation if they want to go with Burt, but we'll see how that thing kind of plays out, and hopefully we can hear how things are going from the coaches, from Coach Cristobal with that. But also too, just kind of pointing out Dylan Joyce, you know, such a, not just a key punter, but a really good holder in the operation, and having him back I think will certainly help out these kickers as they kind of take on either the job as the main guy or whatever role they have. And at least in the competition going on in the fall, I think having a guy like Joyce is certainly a big thing. But that's going to wrap everything up for me. I want to thank everybody for watching. Hopefully you have a good rest of the day, and take care.